Hello everybody, this is Fun Police, and I've wanted to start making videos and various things for cards for quite a while now, and I'm finally doing it. And for my first series, I've wanted to create a guide for new players. When starting as a new player, there's definitely a lot to learn in cards, and I've wanted to assist in that in any way I can. And I think one of the best ways is giving players a mixture of improved deck lists and better direction on how to spend your gold. So for today, we're going to start with the nation of Germany. We're going to take a look at various lists, including the basic starter list you have, and then we are going to slowly improve it as time goes on. I'm going to divide this up into a couple videos, and for today we're going to look at the basic starter list and then the bare minimum on how to improve it with this starter too. The next video will either add in the Catalyst mini expansion or the Theaters of War campaigns. And then after that, in our third and final video for this series, we're going to take a look at different ways you can take this deck into multiple different archetypes in pretty much as expensive as you could call a budget deck. So to get started, let's take a look at the starter list itself. So it is a German-US deck that is seemingly built to be a more aggressive list. It's got a lot of cheap cards and relatively looking to build a strong board quickly and then using that to kill the enemy. Here's the curve cost, and as we see, it's maybe a bit heavy for a full-on aggro deck, but you definitely have a lot of 1-drops, a good amount of 2-drops, and a lot of 3-drops. And it's a okay list, but there's a lot of glaring issues with it, even as a new starting player. The biggest one is going to be the M4 Sherman. The M4 Sherman is a card that requires you to have a US unit in the front line in order to draw 2 cards. And this deck simply doesn't do it. We have a P40 Warhawk, which is a fighter, which really doesn't want to go in the front line. A 75mm Pack Howitzer, which is another unit you don't want to put in the front line. The T19 Howitzer, which you also don't want to put in the front line as it's also an artillery piece. And the M8 Greyhound, which is the only US unit in this deck besides the Sherman itself that you would want to put in the front line. And even then, we only have 3 copies of it. This is a bad ally. This is a bad way to build a US ally for a deck like this. Even as a brand new player that hasn't played a single game, the Shermans are not worth it in this deck. They are very good in US main decks, as you can run enough units in order to make the Sherman good, but for this, it's not worth it. On top of that, stuff like the 75mm Pack Howitzer, the P40 Warhawk, the 25th PANZERGRENADIER, these cards are very weak in their effectiveness. They're often expensive relative to their stats, and if they have an effect, it is of low usefulness. For example, this getting guard, the 25th PANZERGRENADIER getting guard in the front line, is simply not that effective of a unit. It's just that you really want guard in the support line or in some way like that. So this just doesn't work well. So we have a basic outline of maybe how to build the deck, but we need to improve it. So let's go take a look at here's how I would change it. And before we get too far into the deck list, I want to point out that in order to recreate this deck list, all you need to do is your basic collection when you start cards, and then the 9 main tiers of Germany. So when you go into national progression, you're going to level up as you play with a German deck, and once you reach tier 9 on that, you will have all the cards you need for that nation, and then you need to go to the US and play enough to get to tier 6 as their main nation. So tier 9 in the national progression for Germany, and Tier 6 for the US ally. That'll give you all the cards in order to make this. But with that out of the way, let's take a look at the list. So it starts off quite similar. And mainly, the big thing we've done is include more cheap units and arguably better cheap units into the deck, alongside many of the cards we got from National Progression. Things such as the PANZER III-L, Tactical Strike, and the FLAMMPANZER. These are great cards and are very solid, mixing removal or just being very strong in general, such as this one. Then, a card I need to point out specifically is BLITZKRIEG. We get one of these on the National Progression track, and when you reach level 9 on Germany, you get a limited wild card. I highly recommend you craft the second BLITZKRIEG, as this card is one of the core factors in building an aggressive German deck. Germany has a strong reason to go into the front line, and with good control of it, BLITZKRIEG will wipe the enemy away in just a couple attacks. It is extremely powerful, and is going to probably be the main way you win most games with this deck. However, that said, this is not the most optimal deck for BLITZKRIEG, as most BLITZKRIEG decks are looking to mainly have cheaper units, but we, due to a kind of severe budget constraint, have to run some bigger units in order to fill out the deck fully. So, this is why most things after BLITZKRIEG will be more so just good cards for our budget deck. Things like the PANTHER G or the Focke-Wulf, which is actually the card I spent our 2 standard wild cards on. This is a very good card. It's a big fighter unit, so it can block enemy bombers and also attack the enemy HQ quite quickly. And the deployment of drawing a card makes it very good at keeping you with cards in hand while still being able to put stuff out on the board. Very solid budget card. And then in the late game, we are running the US Air Force in order to try to have just a little bit extra punch, because these are quite solid cards for us. The Mustang, the Mitchell, and the B-17 offer 3 relatively large air units, 2 of them bombers, that also have a deployment effect that allows them to do stuff to the enemy. You know, mostly killing enemy units or blowing up specific ones. This deck is, however, going to still largely be oriented towards aggression. We want to find our early 1-drops like a PANZER II-A, a 463rd Battalion, or the Greyhound, followed up with something like a T19, a 59th Panzergrenadier, or a PANZER XXXV-T. And the 35T is in particular really good alongside a turn 1 infantry like the 463rd, as it will then operate for 0 credits, allowing you to move it into the front line and attack the enemy HQ the same turn you play it. It's great for mounting a lot of pressure. Then on turn 3, we're pretty much doing the same thing of wanting to try to play one of our 3-drops, whatever that may be. VOLKSGRENADIER, I will point out, is probably one of the best. It is very large for its cost. 6 health is hard for people to remove, and that measly 1 operation cost means that it's very easy to move and attack with whenever you need it. It's very good at clogging the front line, and is an excellent combination with BLITZKRIEG, as if the enemy can't remove the Volks, they're going to get buffed by BLITZKRIEG and then probably kill the enemy. Beyond that, if we're not able to play an early BLITZKRIEG, we're still going to try to keep control of the front line. We have some Blitz tanks, or a very strong card like the PANTHER G, which is hard to deal with. And we're just going to keep control of the front line, and then we have a large amount of air units that will be able to beat the enemy down from the support line while being safe, as the enemy can't use their own tanks or infantry to attack our HQ. We also have a small mix of removal, such as Sudden Strike, Tactical Strike, the FLAMMPANZER, and Death from Above, in order to give the deck a way to remove problematic things, like a artillery unit, or maybe like a big guard, or something like that, and it will enable us to keep the pressure on, but also not get rolled over if the enemy plays something that we can't immediately kill with our own units. But beyond that, I believe that is mostly it for this deck tech. The deck list will be in the comments of this, or will be in the description of this video, my bad, and it will largely, and again, you only need to reach National Level 9 of Germany and National Progression Level 6 with the US. So it is practically as cheap as you can possibly get, while still making a decent deck. Next video, we'll move on to Starter 3s, both of these, which are variations depending on how we want to spend gold. And we're going to see a significant jump in quality then, as these mini expansions are very good at helping us expand the deck into a stronger position. If you liked this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And I believe that is it. Thank you so much, and have a good day.